Hello, I'm Anup Kumar, and welcome to this yet another new edition of Cleveland Conversations. Today we are going to talk about local journalism, and with a little bit twist to it. The twist here is this, that we will not only talk about local journalism, we'll talk about hyper-local journalism. And in the last few decades, what we have seen is the demise of newspapers. Many cities across the United States don't even have a newspaper. But there is a silver lining in this. And the silver lining is that many neighborhood and community newspapers are doing just fine. Some of them are also thriving. Some of them are innovating new ways how to deal with the digital transformation and yet serve their community. Now, we will talk a little bit about what is neighborhood journalism. And to do that, and to see the future of neighborhood journalism, today we have Mr. Rich Weiss. Mr. Weiss is Vice President of Cleveland Neighborhood and Community Media Association of Greater Cleveland. He's also the Executive Director of Neighborhood Media Foundation and a publisher of a neighborhood newspaper, the Tree Monster, which serves the community in Tremont area of Cleveland. So, welcome, Rich. How are you?
I'm all right. Thank you so much for that introduction, Dr. Kumar.
Oh, I guess, why don't we just build on that introduction and a little bit talk about your passion for journalism, especially at this very micro level.
My wife and I started a community newspaper for our neighborhood of Tremont. It was a hobby, but we were telling stories at a time just when the Plain Dealer was going down to 3 days of home delivery. And then we had a couple of advertisers come to us, particularly the Cleveland Public Schools, and told us they had numbers that our paper was reaching more of their parents on coffee tables and just handing around as a monthly paper than their messaging and stories might be received in the Plain Dealer at 3 days home delivery. So I started taking it seriously. They started buying the back page, and I started looking into why is neighborhood media or community media in general, why is that becoming? It seemed like it was becoming popular. At least my experience delivering the Tree Monster to Tremont residents, there was something special when people would look at this paper and see on the front page their own community. There was something to it, and after doing it for a few years, I thought there's something special here.
Does your passion for journalism was like going back to your college and previous, or it was more driven by seeing the deficit in the community, the information needs, right?
Both.
You could see that.
Yes,
right?
and I was a political cartoonist for my high school newspaper, but I was always in on the headline writing sessions and doing a lot of the editing sessions, and felt like ownership of that paper. So that was probably the first experience where I really thought, we're producing a newspaper. But then fast forward number of years, I worked with the Call & Post newspaper, a 100-some-odd-year-old black newspaper on the east side of Cleveland. I worked with many community papers around Cleveland and realized this is something that it's within our grasp. It's something we can do. It's something not many people think of as a way, hey, I wish my community could learn about this. Not many people think, well, start a newspaper. But once you do, there's an engine that forms of community trust, trust from your neighbors. That's the main thing I'm trying to express.
Is it when you say the trust from your neighbors, is it tied to this notion that there is a sense of place, there is a membership of that community that the newspaper has, you live there, And most of these community newspapers are like that. The publishers belong to the community. Does that play a role in how people feel a sense of belonging, a sense of ownership? I should be supporting this newspaper in that community?
I think it's everything. I
Okay.
think that it's all about if you know, when you go into coffee shops in a neighborhood, or even, you know, an ethnic, a place that has strong pull on a particular ethnic community. You go to those places, you see a stack of free papers. And when you see that stack of free papers, if you also know frequently in that same room, in that same coffee shop, in the same bar or restaurant, that you could actually run into one of these people that's writing these stories, because they are in the community, there's something that people automatically feel a sense of trust. And I don't want to say it's not blind trust. It's just that they know the human beings that this information is coming from. As citywide papers become more regional and have these, I think, an overgrown footprint, and start using more AI in their reporting, it's inevitable that people are going to want to rush to reporting that is completely organic from a community member, even though it may not rise to the quality that you see on larger regional outlets.
As you say, reporting by a community member, and you also acknowledge that does not rise to maybe sometimes to the quality of journalism, especially in terms of writing, in terms of reporting that you might be expecting. So how do you address that? Do you do the training for them? How do you address that deficit in terms of skills and knowledge?
One of my roles is as executive director of Neighborhood Media Foundation, and as you know, one of my flagship project was to bring together this association of over 14 outlets now, and the. In each case, there is, I'm sorry, what was the question again?
I was saying that when you said sometimes the quality might not be the same, and
Yes.
how do you train your journalists
Yes.
to get that quality, reach that?
Altogether, we participated, we convened national and local partners to put together a community journalism training. It's through Tri-C, Cuyahoga Community College. It's an 8-week free training, after which you get a certificate in community journalism. But you can also apply that time. You can test into Tri-C hours. You can get credit hours for it. But primarily, it's just to get it out there to community members. You, community member, we need you to start telling stories. If you feel your community, your ethnicity, your locality is not well represented in larger media, let's see how you do on your own.
Yeah, I recall, we used to have at Cleveland State, our new students would go and work for Telegram, some of these community newspapers, even your newspaper for that matter, the Tree Monster. And that was another way of getting people to work with them. But this idea of getting a certificate in community journalism is a good one, because you're not looking at these reporters as a full-time journalist because they might have other jobs, but they acquire these skills to do the reporting as well.
Absolutely.
Right?
As community members, having
the
empowering community members to tell stories from their own community perspective. Ideally, we're tempting them with credit hours into full programs, into maybe coming to Cleveland State, maybe going to Kent State for J school training. Come back to our community and start doing reporting about your own community. When you go out onto your porch and get your mail, what do you see? Can you report it to your community? If you can, you're probably in the right place doing the right thing. Otherwise, if you're going someplace else to try and be someone else's community, it just doesn't come off as genuine.
So I think that membership of the community, that being a member of that same community is an essential component of that. So how do you see that? How would you, define community journalism or neighborhood journalism? How would you define it?
I would define as separate from local journalism. I would define community journalism as stories being told from the perspective by and for the community in concern. And so a lot of where I'm concerned with trust in
Right.
media.
Yeah.
So a lot of the distrust comes when you have outsiders coming into a community and describing what's going on, usually for an audience that's not inside that community. So really the community itself is neither the subject totally or the recipient of that information.
Right.
But if you have someone from within that community tell that same story or partner with a larger organization that's trying to tell a story that people in that community are going to absorb, then you need to really use, I call it the voice of that community. You need to allow room for community voice in with quality journalism.
Yeah, I see how you have conceptualized it, and I see a value in it as well. And so if we generally when we think of journalism, we talk about watchdog function of newspapers, but in addition to that, I've always felt that there is this serving the information needs of the community, right? And I think that's where you're pitching community journalism, serving the information needs of the community.
Yes, yes, absolutely. And it's not that we can do the job fully ourselves. Like as the Tree Monster, my neighborhood newspaper, 8,000 residents, we can't do journalism. We can't fill the hole in journalism ourselves.
Right.
But if we gather with our other outlets, it's a simple concept. Form an association, share, compete. Instead of competing, collaborating, cooperating, because particularly in ethnic, community, and independent media, you're dealing with totally separate audiences. Why wouldn't you collaborate to deliver better quality
so
information?
There is this association of Cleveland, Neighborhood and Community Media Association.
Yes.
There's a lot of collaboration over there, sharing of stories, sharing of news stories which get published in different publications. Those kinds of things happen as well.
Yes,
right?
we have a regular date with the mayor for community media only roundtables, and we'll do these even after a State of the City speech. He'll come to we've done these live on WOVU radio as well. He'll come to our outlets for questions. And he just speaks to us directly. And when you hear Annie Ying Pu from the Erie Chinese Journal ask a question, there's a quality of the voice. There's a community nature of the face that you don't normally see. Pierre Bajani from the Profile News Ohio, which does Middle Eastern Arabic papers. La Via is a brand new newspaper just by and for Cleveland's Hispanic community. When everybody introduces themselves, you feel like, as a newsmaker, you're talking directly to these grassroots communities.
I can see how that creates diversity of voices. It tries to, serve the ideal of pluralism in society. So I can see that benefit that comes from it from the community level. But and especially when you mentioned these ethnic media which was serving different ethnic communities in Greater Cleveland. Cleveland is very diverse. It has all these ethnic communities which have their own neighborhoods. So I can see that. How do you sustain a venture like this, which largely is a community service? I'm sure nobody's becoming a millionaire running a neighborhood newspaper, right? So how do you do that?
Chuck Hoven, who is the managing editor of the Plain Press, famously said to me, "It's a vow of poverty." But I do feel that there's a new day. I'm depending on it. I feel there's new popularity of community papers, ethnic papers, independent papers. and online as well. I'm not anti online. I just don't feel that the decline of the industry is as focused on the trust issue as it should be. It's focused on newsprint versus digital. It's focused on advertising to exurbs versus inside Cleveland zip codes. There are a number of ways that the I lost myself again with that train of thought.
That's okay. I'll go move to something which you might want to share more about. So do you think that foundations and grant-making agencies are more supportive of this venture? They see the value in it, usually, at this level.
We need to, again, just define the difference between community journalism and local journalism.
Yeah.
Yes, I feel that there's a big national push for local journalism and supporting or reinventing ways to have at least one outlet speaking for an entire city or more likely a region.
Yeah.
In this case, I think we're still a ways off from foundations, particularly national foundations, thinking that community media would be the solution, mainly because how can you, it's difficult to visualize, they've got a certain number of checks. Are they really going to write checks to the million different ethnic and community media outlets because this is going to grow the fertile ecosystem?
Yeah, but
I don't think so, but I'm hoping that some of these efforts like associations will help.
But I'm more seeing in terms of community foundations. We're not looking at national foundations, but looking at community foundations who are in the community and they serve their community in that. So that's where the community journalism that you're talking about fits in. We're not talking about them funding thousands of communities. We're talking about, let's say 14 communities.
Yes,
right?
Absolutely.
Those kinds of things. Okay, yeah. So those conversations must be going on, right, with these local foundations to support this kind of effort.
The biggest conversation going on right now is Press Forward, and a lot of our local foundations are putting funding into $500 million for a national effort, Press Forward, which will have
These
little
regional,
hubs, and they are having open calls. They just had an open call for specifically underreported ethnic and other groups, media outlets. They will have in the fall a call for innovative structures for reinventing news.
Press Forward is an excellent venture, and it's been supporting, doing these different ways. It's innovating how to support journalism, and some of those innovations will surely pan out in a way that will be good for neighborhood journalism as well, in addition to local journalism.
And here in Cleveland, we had a group of funders come together that called themselves the Journalism Funders Collaborative.
Okay.
And so a lot of what they did was research that wound up leading them to Signal Cleveland. And so their funding is going to Signal Cleveland, their funding is going to Press Forward. But as far as, I feel like this foundation of community and grassroots journalism has to be built by us. I think we have to build it, and we have to build it now. But eventually the efforts that we see going on towards local journalism will lead foundations, local and national, to the grassroots community outlets, because once you get to the dead end, the cul-de-sac, you have to get off your bike and go through the weeds, and you need someone who knows what that area looks like, where the important milestones are, to lead you through that. We need to partner with and collaborate with even larger local media outlets, or else I'm afraid they will not survive. Like you said, ethnic and community outlets, we seem to be doing just fine with however the economy goes. The larger outlets are not, and it does not seem like they know how to partner with us in order to make their content interesting to people, I think, within Cleveland zip codes.
I and my colleague Leo Jeffries, who some years ago had done a study, nationwide study on community newspapers, and what we found was that they were very bullish about the future and the prospects for themselves, both in terms of whether they will survive or going forward, whether they will be able to serve their communities. That was a very, sanguine finding for us, which gave us hope. And then obviously that shows up even in your organization. So
I'm going to have to look up that study. I had not heard of that.
Oh, yeah,
study.
it was, I don't want to just, I know, we can talk about that later. But I'm just saying that there is a study backing it, right? And done by your friends, right? Cleveland State.
Thank you so much.
Right. So, so if you look at this serving the community, you are hopeful of the future. You are not pressing the panic button and saying, unlike what we are seeing in local journalism, because in local journalism, I often come across the phrase, what happens when no one is watching, right? What happens when no one is watching? How many times I come across this, that people in power generally tend to go astray when no one is watching, right? But that's not your primary concern. Your concern is community bonding, community issues, right?
And of course, if someone in our community, if a community member or a business in our community is being harmed, that's certainly something we are going to stand up for. We can dig in and do our own, accountability journalism. Absolutely.
Right.
But yes, the front page, when you look at our paper, you should see community members, and this goes for all of our community papers. Community members rolling up their sleeves and doing good for the community. That's what is most needed. Talk about information needs. Of course, in the 50s, when newspaper sales reps learn they can sell washing machines in the suburbs, and they're telling reporters, you got to come out here and make some relevance out here. You got to tell some stories out here because I can sell washing machines. Their kids eventually learned that they could sell ads for Lexus Christmas presents in the exurbs. How do they find their way? The reporters are stretched way out into the exurbs. All we have in Cleveland zip codes is police scanner journalism, which sure, it helps scare the suburbs and exurbs into buying security systems for their homes, but it doesn't do much for trust in journalism. It just sets up this us versus them scenario that makes a single entity money. But when you actually look at what the people in those communities want to talk about, it's the new garden that was put in. It's the fact that we want to battle to get parking spaces back instead of a sidewalk for a pizza joint. It's these little tiny victories that we, as the Tree Monster, were there for, and Tremont residents noticed. You can feel voiceless in this world. You shouldn't, because there should be a community journalist nearby at a coffee shop near you where you can get your concern heard.
Yeah, I see your point, and this actually just gives me more hope as somebody who studies local, hyperlocal journalism, community journalism.
All around the world.
Yeah, all over the world. And so I'm very pleased with, this is kind of that you are hopeful, because often we get the pessimism from the publishers themselves. When we talk to publishers of news organizations, they are the ones who express those feelings, which then feeds through the community. And so thank you very much, Mr. Weiss, for coming and participating in this series of Cleveland conversations we've been carrying out. And thank you all for watching. And I'm Anup Kumar. See you next time. Thank you.